Okay, folks, this is episode 41 of Going South. I'm super excited and grateful today to talk with Barbara Major. She is a longtime community organizer that's done work around anti-death penalty, welfare rights work, anti-hunger work. But for the last 40 plus years, she's also been a core trainer with the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. That's where I met her back in the 90s. um, specializing kind of doing undoing racism workshops and kind of community organizing around combating systematic racism and leadership development. So I Barbara doesn't know, but she's one of my sheroes, heroines, and teachers. I was just when I the first time I saw her kind of participate in the workshop, and I believe that you were the first woman core trainer too, right, in the institute. Um, I was amazed at what she had to offer, her clarity, her power, and I learned so much from her and everybody else in the institute. So she's been kind enough to make time to chat with me today. If I'm not mistaken, you were born in New Orleans, right?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
But you're from Franklinton, Louisiana.
Yeah, I did growing up. Like we lived what we call the country, depending on the
Mhm.
economics of the family. We'd have to
Right.
move back to the country. But I was born here in New Orleans, graduated high school and graduated college in New Orleans. I'm
Gotcha.
I'm New Orleans to the bone, but you never my marrow is in rural Louisiana,
I gotcha.
on the farm with my grandfather.
Gotcha. What did you study? You were at
Um,
Southern, right? Southern
my
University.
undergraduate degree is in sociology, and I have a graduate degree in social work.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Um, I listened to the interview you did with the folks I was mentioning a minute ago, and maybe if you could just talk about how you stumbled. I mean, you were kind of always activist, and you said that either your grandmother or somebody basically said, or you did, that this is the work you were created to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
can you just tell folks what that means, I guess?
I didn't always, even though, you're taught when you're young, go to school, get an education, and get a good job. That was a lot of what I received, as most African American children did. It was never about the entrepreneurship, not on a big scale. And so for me, I had all intentions. In fact, I hadn't even really intended on going to college, and I was offered a scholarship in math. I was good in math, but once I got to college, I go like, oh hell to the no, this is a whole lot of work. I'll go in sociology. But I've always been somebody who didn't understand. I saw stuff that was wrong. I didn't always understand it and know what to do with it because I grew up in the apartheid South. People call it Jim Crow, whatever, but it was apartheid. And so as I begin to do this work, my life experiences, and when I look back, all of the trauma and the wonderful times and all that in my family, I realized that God has readied me to do this work, to be the buffer for my community. And so, but when I was really young, it's interesting, there's always an elder in the family that kind of tell children kind of what you're gonna do. I
Right.
was a little girl, but I never forgot. It was my great great aunt said, and I remember her saying, "This is a race baby." I didn't know what that meant. Had no idea. And later on, as I became an adult, I began to understand that whole history of being a race child or race baby, which meant that you were going to be an advocate for the race. Um, and then I realized, all of these struggles that I've been through and I've seen my family go through, I was created to do this. Everything from being born to a single mom, all of this stuff, I realized and I'm grateful at the same time that I still have not seen or felt so much of the pain that other people have. But I felt enough that I could empathize and say, yeah, I could feel it, not at the same level. So I realized, yeah, you were created, woman, to do this work for your community. And I won't say that that happened like I heard this voice or whatever.
Burning
As
bush.
wasn't it, yeah, it wasn't that spooky.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but I realized that this is my purpose. And once I realized that, I'm attempting to walk my purpose. And that is to make sure that everybody is seen and treated as a human being. I remember when I was a little girl and I was with my little nieces, and this woman, this was a Black woman, and she called her grandkids inside and she gave them candy. And my little niece and my little nephew wanted candy. And she closed the door and she wouldn't give them candy. And they were crying. And I was angry. They were crying, but I was angry. And Mark, God is my witness. I said, when I grow up, no child is going to want candy. And I think that a lot of what I do is about no child crying and wanting something that they deserve,
Gotcha.
like all other children deserve.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of pieces to me, even the part where I go like, one time I go like, God, I'm really good at this. And, I know how to do this stuff. I'm an organizer. This was like a voice in my head. God said, no, you ain't all that. Sit down somewhere. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you doing what you're supposed to do. That don't make you smarter or better or any of that.
Yeah.
It means some other folk ain't taking care of business. You just taking care of the business you're supposed to be taking care of.
Did you ever struggle with it? You know what I mean? Like, I know it's not maybe it's a call, but the struggling with feeling like that's what you're supposed to do, but it's not what you necessarily want to do.
Actually, no. I've struggled with thinking that my calling was somewhere else, and that was a struggle to say.
In terms of location?
Knowing in terms of doing stuff, like, for instance, I thought one time I was supposed to go into politics because people would say, you should run for this. And I go like, am I really? And I realized, no, there needs to be a voice that is attached and detached at the same times when it comes to the political system. So no, that's not where I'm supposed to be. But struggling, I've been blessed enough to, laugh, and I've been very happy. And I realize that I've met the most amazing people, you one of them, in my life. I have a wealth of people in my life that I met. So I've never regretted or felt like, oh, this was the wrong thing. Of course, you look back and go like, damn, if I had done this, I could be rich. Now, I don't know what I'd do if I was rich, but then I go like, yeah, right. I wouldn't know what to do, but I enjoy my life. Even I won't say I want to enjoy the struggling times, but when I look back over my life in its totality, I very much have had a good life. And it's so I have no complaints. There's no struggle in me doing what I do.
Yeah. There have been moments, especially like in national trainings, like where you just know you're in the room with giants. I don't know if you ever felt that way.
Oh my God. You in the room
like
with,
history, you know what I mean?
like
History
Reverend
makers.
C.T. Vivian and Reverend Kirkpatrick and Ron and Jim Dunn. I mean, yes, I've felt this a lot. And for me, that's been the greatest gift of it, that I've touched these people and talked to them and learned from them. And hopefully they learn from me. But I think what's most important, they also saw something in me. And when you do this work, you don't always see it yourself. You don't think you're capable enough, or, you're smart enough, is usually what people say. And I realized that the smartest people that I've ever met have often been those which would have been defined as the most uneducated. And when in actuality, they were more educated because life had taught them in their experiences, and learning to value that. Because oftentimes when we get the degrees and, we think that we know something they don't know.
Get institutionalized.
Yeah, I'm going like, and they know so much. Look, they've forgotten stuff we will never know. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I'm good. I'm good.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if I understand what little I understand about how racism works, it wasn't something I learned in a college classroom. It's been doing work with folks,
Exactly.
and being graced to have folks of color in my life who love me through my arrogance, wokeness, the whole 9 yards, you know.
Let me tell you, and that's even for me as a black woman, as a woman of African descent, growing up in the apartheid South, Mark, I never imagined myself ever wanting to work with or even loving white people. That was, and I remember one time I said, like, I don't know why God created white people. They're just not human. And one of the greatest lessons I ever learned was C.T. Vivian, the great Reverend C.T. Vivian said, what did you say, Sister Barbara? You know, you talk real fast. I said, Reverend Vivian, they're just not human. He said, to the degree that you see any human being as less than a human being, you out of touch with what it means to be a human being. Man, that I had to step back and say, where is this taking me? Somewhere where I look at people as something less than. And so that was part of my own growth and development, to say that I live in a world with all kind of people, and I've got to accept when people don't know what they don't know. Now, so loving folk is a difficult task in this society, and it's even more difficult when you are called to love people that you know hate you.
Yeah.
But I see, I could never, you talked about these giants. I look at what they dealt with and we're like, my God, I don't know if I was strong enough. So I'm the first one. I will take you down when I hear people criticize those in the movement who came before us, when they say, I wouldn't have taken this. You don't know what you would. Go sit in a corner somewhere. The strength that it took to be able to take so much, I'm just in awe of them. You know what I'm saying? I'm in awe. Like, myself, I laugh, like I've been called a lot of names and all that, been threatened and all that stuff. But I always think of the funniest thing is when some guy I was speaking somewhere called me a communist. At that time, I didn't know what the hell a communist was. I thought, I'm Baptist. I don't know nothing about I'm Baptist. I learned this in Sunday school. You feed the hungry, you house the homeless, you don't take care of the widows and the children. That was a Sunday school lesson for me. So it's like, and for me, humor helps me maintain my sanity, but it also helps me humanize hateful people. You know what I'm saying? It's like you gotta, if you're always so serious and you always look, man, that's depressing. So sometimes you gotta laugh at this foolishness. Like, they got to be kidding, right? Like, and you keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. I hope one day somebody kind of writes about the spirituality of anti-racism.
See, thank you.
You know what
Because
I
a
mean?
lot of people don't. And honestly, for me, as I look at the emerging movement in this country, I don't feel that. And maybe they can do it without it. I don't know, Mark, but I couldn't do it without it. Because sometimes you need something stronger than yourself. It don't have to be a God like I believe in, but something beyond you that you got to hold on to. Like we talk about, I think oftentimes of the songs, as civil rights movement, I'd be like, those were, as David Billings would say, they were sustaining songs. That would build your courage up. And for me, it's laughing or whatever in the very scary times. And we live in a, very scary time, but I have to remind people it's always been a scary time for many people in this country. I'm surprised that people are so surprised as what's going on. You know what I'm saying? You didn't hear me 20, 30 years ago tell you this crap was gonna come down like this. So it's been an interesting journey that I'm still on, still learning, trying to figure it out. And something I said the other day, I was in a conversation, and there was another Black woman, and I consider myself an elderly Black woman because I am elderly, but I am not. So I can deal with older people in a respectful way when I don't think young people necessarily know how to do this. And she was challenging the whole thing of racism. It was an older Black woman. And you know what I realized? I said, she's got it. Well, we don't need to talk about it. And I realized she represents the most hurt and most damaged of us. It's like a cry. Can we not do it? Because you're opening a wound, and can we just love each other? And that's a very dangerous. We can't stick our head in the sand and just say, let's just love each other and it's going to all be good, because that love is not enough unless your loving is also a verb, and it is, you know what I'm saying? That means
Yeah.
you taking some action, you doing something, you're trying to make a difference. And it's not all the big stuff, little differences. For me, when I see a child, or I'll tell them how beautiful they are, or I could see how brilliant they are, and I know they're doing good. I was at a funeral, believe it or not, and there was this little kid, right? Little boy. And I looked at him, I said, "You are so handsome. And I can tell you are so smart." I said, but I can look at him, I go like, but you've been cutting up in school. I said, but you can't do that because you're so smart. You're gonna be so great one day. And his mom said, are you a reader? And in the community, that means that you
Mm,
can see into the future. I go like, no, I'm not a reader. I said, but I see gifts in this baby that he does not yet see in himself. So to that degree, we can all be readers, and read into some positive, I guess, vibes, for lack of a better
yeah.
word. Speak positivity to our children. And our children, for me, ain't just the ones you give birth to or you related to, but the potential. Somebody needs to do it, because I don't know if they're getting it somewhere else. Or even if I see a woman, I'll tell her, I don't care if it's the blouse. Oh, that's a beautiful blouse. Oh, I like that bag. Or I like those tennis. Because what I realize is that may be the only positive thing that person will get in that day. So it didn't hurt me none, because when they light up, shit, they give me energy. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, like,
Yeah.
sister feeling good now. I don't know what you felt like before, but that's all of our jobs, not just mine. And I wish we would take it more serious.
Amen. Amen. When you were doing all this early work prior to the bumping into the institute, did you have a racial lens? Or
No,
mm,
no, you don't even have to go any further. No, I
mm,
did not. I being a victim of racism, and some people of color, black folk, I don't speak for other people of color, would say, like, I'm a victim. My thing is, I belong to a collective that's being victimized. I'm a victim. However, that's not all that I am. I'm a resistor to my victimization, but I cannot deny it. And no, I didn't. Jim Dunn was the one that helped me understand. The first time I heard Jim, I
we're talking
jumped up
like
in,
late 70s, right?
yes,
Yeah.
I jumped up in the workshop and was like, my God, I'm not crazy. I didn't have the words. You know, I
Mm,
I couldn't articulate what I was feeling. This brother put the words that made sense to me, that made me know what I was feeling. It gave words to the feeling of it gave clarity to what I was seeing. But no, I did not have an analysis. And that's why I define myself now as an anti-racist community organizer versus being a community organizer. Um, I'm sorry, Mark, can you just stop taping for a second?
yeah, hold on just a second. Worries. No, we were just talking about kind of your development of a racial lens, and Jim kind of giving you language.
Yeah, he gave us all the framework, and that framework, we've put a lot of meat on it in the last 40 years. But Jim was so ahead of his time. His brilliance, this country has no idea of the Jim that they had, and I mean Jim.
Mm,
This brother, and he was always, though, very clear that he was standing on the shoulders of those that came before, just like I'm standing on his shoulders and a lot of other folk that came before. But I didn't understand systemic racism. We had down with the system and down with the man. I tell folk I didn't have an address for either. You know what I'm saying? But the language was sounding really
yeah.
powerful, revolutionary. But
Felt
when I
good, right?
began, yeah, right. But when I began to understand, it also um, helped me realize how deep this stuff is. And it kept me saying that I realized that it may not happen in my lifetime,
Mm,
because I've seen a lot of my friends lose a lot of who they are because they gave all that they had. and they didn't see the change, even though they did make a change, even if it was in people like me. So yeah, a racial lens, and it's developed for me over the decades. I've learned more. I find it real interesting now that we talk about critical race theory, because some PhDs have written some books.
That
But
probably were in workshops.
yeah, thank you. And then I'm gonna tell you, like, I'm gonna say it for real. They
We
stole our stuff. Okay,
colonized, right?
that's exactly right. Black ones, white ones, all of them. And I'm going, like, we were doing this way before, and I think about folks who, Dr. Milana Karenga, who really started pushing this whole conversation around race and what it was. Folk who are not given credit, but it's the same thing. Those in power get to identify those who should be the ones to explain to us. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but they should also give credit to where they got it from. They didn't just come up with it because it's like we didn't, because we were all that brilliant. We're smart people, but we built off the base and the foundation of those even in the civil rights movement, learning from what they did that worked and learning from what they did that didn't work. Because when the Institute first started, Jim and Ron, before I was a third trained and the first woman. And I got to tell you the story how I became a trainer. It wasn't because I was some hotshot trainer and I really understood stuff. But
So
they went.
but you had gone to a workshop, right? And then they approached you. Is that what happened?
Yeah. See, I had worked with Ron for many years as a community organizer. And Jim and Ron were going around the country. Wasn't a lot of workshops, but they started doing the workshops. These two African-American men and white women were wearing them out about patriarchy. I mean, they couldn't say anything. And what they knew, what Ron knew about me, even more than Jim, that I knew how to back white folks off me. You know what I'm saying? Women, men, but particularly white women, because I had already struggled around the women's movement and the intrinsic racism within that movement.
Right.
So it's like we can't even build a women's movement that is multicultural and multi-racist, racial, because you all are unwilling to deal with racism. So we talk about racism not being the number one oppression, but is the foundation that maintains all the other oppressions in this country, because we can't organize across these created racial lines to build a movement. And so that's how I got to be a trainer, really, to come in and give Jim and Ron breathing room, to talk. Right. And it's like, and started and bringing that perspective in, both as a woman who was a womanist and is a womanist, understanding feminism and the understanding the work of the women's movement, because I would never say they didn't do anything, they were all wrong. Every movement has contributed something. However, it does not mean that we should not critique these movements to see why is it that it didn't go as far as it must go, not that it stopped. How do we keep moving that movement? And to understand how the movement for social justice and the civil rights movement was broken up into about 15, 16 different movements. Yeah. I'm saying, like, you can have it, but sometimes we got to come together. It's like this, it's like if Earth is cut into a bunch of different pieces. We've got to come back together at some point to figure out how we become whole as people, as community, and globally as well. So that's how I became a trainer. And because, and the other thing is I was an organizer. And Jim Dunn understood very clearly that to really make change in this country, it wasn't about just having the analysis, but how do you apply this analysis to your work, to keep your work moving and to expand your work, to move further than just creating programs. Because one of the things I realized is that all these 501c3s and programs became a distraction from dealing with social change. And we became this social service industry versus social justice movement. Yeah. And so in the book I was telling you about earlier, I talk about this. Yeah. It's like, because I go like, you know what, these and I ran 501c3s and I'm not saying people should get rid of them, but we must understand why they were created. And we got to figure out how we creatively change them to not only provide the services because the services are needed, but we've got to push beyond providing service to continue to question why the need for services and how do we change that need.
Yeah. Well, and in that, as well as kind of backing up to the workshop, I mean, there's the question of accountability, right? Because one of the things I
Yes.
remember being stressed in the workshop was, you need to be doing grounded work in a community, right? Where you're being kind of held accountable. And I'd say that, I mean, that's one of the big problems with the nonprofits, right? Who's on the board, who started it,
Yeah.
who gets paid, who doesn't, who develops it, right? You know,
Yeah, we know that, like you really want to see it played out. Like I am a firm believer that the brightest and most brilliant consultants about a community is the community itself.
Yeah.
However, when we have these meetings, we can invite all the 501c3s, they're getting paid.
Yeah,
Community
absolutely.
don't get paid. And one time one of them had the audacity to question why. I said, you're gonna pay the folk if they come. Well, you getting paid. What's the
Yeah.
problem? They should get paid. They know more about the community than you do.
Right.
So that was always for me, that's something, and I still deal with that. I said, no, you pay
Me
people.
too.
Because some people will say, even for an Undoing Racism workshop, well, we can't get no community people. You offered to pay them, they're gonna come sit up with you, all day. They probably don't like you as much as you think they do.
Right.
Then you pay people and you build their capacity when they participate with you from beginning to end. You build their capacity to hold you accountable. And that's a real tricky thing, but it's real necessary, because just saying you're accountable to the community, but the community does not even have the same language that you have around these issues. So part of our responsibility as anti-racist community organizers is build the community's capacity to pull our coattail.
Yeah.
And I've had that happen to me. And I go like, okay, did my job. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But it's like,
Yeah.
and it was a great example because I worked in the community for a long time, St. Thomas, And when I got ready to leave, I said, you got to know it's time for me to, the community got this leadership. However, when I got ready to leave, I had some suggestions for them, in terms of, who they are. And it was so funny. I had to laugh myself. And I said, I was in a room with these voluptuous sisters, and I'm so glad they love me, because they could have just tossed me through the window at the time. And they said, Boy, Major, you taught us about accountability. I said, yeah. They said, well, you're not being accountable to us. We know who we want to get to do what. And I'm grateful. God, I'm so grateful to this day that for me to have the understanding to say, you know what, you're absolutely right. I need to keep my mouth closed and move on. When you need me, you call me and you ask me. But that's real hard because your ego can be bruised. But you got to know, it's like, it ain't all that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but when you're in real relationship, when they call you on stuff, you can laugh because they call me, they love me. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
this could have, this could have been twisted,
Yeah.
but they called me out because they cared about me, and they called me on my own stuff. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely right. I have no right to do this. I'm leaving. And they didn't want me to go at first, but I knew, and they came to accept and say, yeah, we know what you're saying. Y'all got this. And I'm not saying they had it all perfect, but I didn't either. And you want to stop, it's like you want to, I don't want y'all to make the same mistakes I made. Well, guess what? They're gonna make some, they'll make their own. And some of them might look like the ones I made, but they're
Right.
not the same ones I made. But it's been a real interesting accountability is very, very difficult. And so when organizations say they want to be accountable or they want to be an anti-racist organization, they must create equity in the education and information about systemic racism. That can't just be on one side. That is the only way you can be accountable to a community, when a community can articulate to you what you're doing that does not fit what they want or their reality, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. Well, I think we get good at saying, using the term accountability, but many of us don't necessarily know what that looks like or feels like, right? Too,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
when,
It's been this fake Jake and stuff where they go find certain kind of people to set on a board.
right.
But those folk They're good people. However, being good is not enough. They need to understand their responsibility on that board,
Right.
both to educate and educate that the board, but also the community must always be part of that process. Because as you're educating as an organizer, it is not just educating those who are, who are the racists, but it's also educating those who are the victims of racism.
Was the this is probably a stupid question, but was the analysis traumatic in any way? Because when you were talking about that elder earlier, right, and we've had to really grapple with not re-traumatizing folk. And I remember being in Greensboro with someone from the local housing authority, someone who's kind of got their degree, became a social worker, a woman of color. We do the workshop, and she has just discovered she's now a gatekeeper. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think it can quote unquote traumatize white folks, as all of a sudden we find out we ain't who we thought we were, and the country ain't what it quite. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a lot of us
I
find out
mean,
we
was
ain't
it
all that in a bag of chips neither.
right? Right.
You know what
Was
I'm
it
saying?
yeah. Was it
It,
primarily liberating though, or was there any grappling with the implications?
it is, for me, it was liberating, but also you have to be careful to help people understand. Don't backtrack.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of the stuff you can't go back and change. That's why I said, don't beat up on yourself for what
Yeah.
you didn't do because you didn't know how to do it.
Right.
I would spend a whole lot of my time doing that. So I've come to the conclusion, and I say to people, I did the best that I could with what I understood.
Yeah.
Now I understand better. Old people say when you know better, you do better. See them old people, them old sayings, Mark, they
Yeah.
make and they didn't always make sense. They make sense. That's
You
why
got
I
to
go
get
to
there, right?
school. Yeah, they make sense. It's like, yeah, it's like I can't, because I go like, if I had, you might spend a moment, wow, if I had known this then, but I didn't know that then. And so it's like, okay, I didn't do everything wrong. None of us did, but I know I didn't do everything right regardless. And so people talk about, I've heard that people saying being re-traumatized. The bottom line is when your ass don't have the truth, you getting traumatized every
Yeah.
day anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like you take that hit with the truth and you internalize it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But you don't internalize it in a way to damage yourself
Right.
as an organizer. You internalize it in a way to say, wow, how do I do my work different than I've done it before?
Yeah. Can you talk just a little bit for folks about what the distinction between an activist is and an organizer, if that makes any sense? Because I
Yeah,
think these words get used a lot interchangeably,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know. And I just want folks to be clear on the
yeah,
distinction that you're making.
yeah. Like the difference between organizing and mobilizing.
Yeah. And
There's a real
marches and movements, right?
and people don't understand the difference because because people say I'm an activist. Well, sometimes I am, and you need to be clear what your role is at a given time. But an activist can activate people, but an organizer educates, motivates, and does movement building, builds a collective. An activist does more event and organizes building for the long haul, the long stretch of what a movement is, knowing that their place in this space is only momentary. But an organizer, you got to be there for the long haul. You know what I'm saying? That's why you see all us old organizers dying, still organizing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Activists come and go. You know what I'm saying? It's
Right.
like, I don't know what the latest flavor is of the day. They're an activist, but an organizer has it's you have to have certain skills to be an organizer. You can just be pissed off and be an activist.
Yeah.
If you can get people riled up, but then what? You know what I'm saying? An organizer can get people riled up, but then there's a path they're getting ready to walk. Activists usually will deal with the moment in terms of emotion. They may activate a lot of the pain and stuff people are feeling. An organizer knows how to manipulate that pain to help people take a step, not just stand there and be enraged in it. So an organizer, first you have to have people think if you can, you can get people riled up, you're an organizer. No, then what? It is a then what that organizers do. that long term, not just having a meeting, but in that meeting, you're able to identify and discern the leadership that you know has the potential. You invest time in that leadership in that community. You help that community know as much as you know. Okay, not just spouting out that you've read all the books on critical race theory or whatever,
Right.
but that community should know as much as you know. And like one of my best organizers, she could never pronounce the word racism. She was in racism. I said, baby, it don't matter that you can't pronounce it. You understand what it is now. And what you got to do to help the people in this community, because you're not the only one. An organizer also understand that they can't be the only one always.
Right.
Activist users like that's your identity now, but you can
Leader.
play those. Let me tell you, you can play the role as organizer, activists, and leaders. And I've been in all those roles, and I won't say that I've done a good job in all of them, but I had to be able to discern, when am I the activist, when am I the organizer, when am I the leader, and the community will let you know which one you ought to be today. You know, somebody said to me, but man, I need you to get the folk together. I said, okay. So I'm the activist. I can get folk there. I said, okay, the organizing piece. And then the community said, we got you got them here. Now we're gonna do this. So it's work, it's the long haul work that organizers do. And like I said, you educate, you motivate, you build leadership. That is, and you help people understand what it means to be accountable. And you work the long hours with folk who've been damaged by the internalization of this oppression, whatever the oppression is. If I look at all the different forms of oppression, you learn how to build a network that you know it's not just your little group or not just you. Those are the things an organizer help folk understand and identify the internalization of racial oppression, whether it's the superiority or the inferiority. Because I always say that's two sides of the same coin. It is so much more work that I didn't understand because I wasn't trained to be an organizer. This has been learning. I mean, I was trained, but not in college. You
Right.
come out, you do the work, you get your butt kicked enough
Yeah.
and your head banged, and
Yeah.
you become more skilled. If you stay in it, you get more skilled at it. You know that you make mistakes. It's like, okay, I made some mistakes. How do I clean this up?
Yeah.
And you are also vulnerable to the community that you're working with. Not like you some,
Yeah.
super person. No, I got the same thing. I got struggles going on in my life or whatever. How do we do this together? Not just me being in a position. And the difference between a leader, because an organizer or an activist is not necessarily a leader. The community will determine who the leader is. And maybe that organizer is to help build the capacity of that designated leader in that community.
Yeah. I think the other thing I think in there is love, right?
Can't do it without
There
it.
got to be some love up in all of it, right?
Yeah, let me tell you, because I keep saying, I say all these foundations coming out with these toolkits, that's the new thing out there.
Yeah.
Gotta have a tool. And not one of them, I said, and I somewhere I was speaking, I said, not one of these toolkits do I hear the word love. Not one of them. It's all this, the technical and the skills, but you got to love the people, and you got to love and believe in the possibility and the potential for us to be different. And I don't know if everybody, you know, I don't know, we can dismiss people. Like, I can't dismiss somebody who might disagree with me in my community on this analysis, and they know I say, I still love you, but I ain't gonna agree with you. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So, because I may come back and that person may be ready to move. People are not always ready to move when we ready to move them.
Yeah.
And so we've got to build that. Love has to do with also building loving relationships where people trust you enough that one, they're willing to hear what you have to say. And then they gradually may be willing to walk with you. And then over time, if you're a good organizer, they will lead you. That's
Yeah.
that's
Absolutely. Well, one of the things I remember from you and I believe Dave was just the internalized piece, right? It was the first time I heard anybody publicly articulate the idea that, white supremacy, racism is internalized. And Can you just talk about that a little bit for folks that may aren't familiar with kind of the notions of internalized superiority and
Yeah,
inferiority?
and yeah, and we say in the Institute that it is the internalization of racial oppression. It manifests itself in the internalization of superiority and the internalization of inferiority. But it's not about all white people walking around, I'm better than black folk, I'm better than not about that. It's a and or people or black people and people of color walking around, I'm not as good as this human being.
Not necessarily
It is
conscious, right?
definitely not always conscious.
Yeah.
It is how we've been socialized to react and respond to life, to everyday life. And we're not always, definitely not conscious of it. And one of the things that was happening is that I started dealing with the internalization of the inferiority because I needed to understand what was going on in my own community. I was seeing stuff, you know, I grew up, I'm old school, right? So I grew up where you didn't curse in front of older people. You didn't even smoke your cigarette, let alone something else in front of older people. That men in my community protected us. You know, like I worked at night, but the brother standing on the corner made sure when I got off the bus, that may not have been my brothers that I made around the corner. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going like, so what's going on? And when my people are fighting over 50 cents and the city just ripped us off $50 million, you know, something's going on. So it made me, and I don't know if that's a sociologist in me or a social work in me, it made me wanted to understand. And I said, if I don't understand it, I will start to blame my people. And I can't go there. They've been blamed enough. We've been blamed enough. So I started to really look at the psychology of racism. And I'm not a psychologist, so I don't put that out there. But hey, yeah, but I'm pretty smart, okay? And I had to understand what is the impact of this on my brain. And I started to look at everything. I use my own family as my case study. It's like, what was different between me, my my older son? Because I saw my community change dramatically. And I'm also the era of Vietnam. And so I had to look at the fact of like all the brothers were taken out, mostly, not just brothers, sisters too. But I said all the black men were taken out of my community, sent back damaged. Okay. There was nothing that talked about PTSD back then. These brothers, mostly brothers, but like I said, I could never leave the women out either. They were damaged. And at the same time, those would have been the folk who would have helped to teach the next generation their responsibility. At the same time, I'm seeing the drugs and the guns coming into my community. I mean, I'm just sitting back watching this, and like I said, Jim Dunn rather, helped me put it all together. Say, my God, look at what happened in my community where I can no longer keep my door locked. Not that we didn't have stuff going on in our community, but I know not at the level that I saw it happening. And then I had to deal with the fact of how one of the best examples, my older son, had said he had caught the bus to go do something with one of his friends. And he came home and he said to me, Ma, I said, yeah. He said, we went to get tennis shoes, blah, blah, blah. And some white boys tried to spit on me. And when I asked young people now, what would you have done? I told them to fight, blah, 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 blah. Well, my son was home. He was safe. And the question I asked him will haunt me for the rest of my freaking life. I asked my son, what were you doing there? At that time, I did not realize, Mark, what I was saying to my son. Look, black boy, there are places for you, and there are some places that are not for you. And I realized that I was passing on. See, that to me is internalization of racial inferiority. But at the same time, I'm trying to keep my son safe. So the contradictions of these realities. And I go like, wow, I was telling, and there's always in this country, you know, like, you better know your place. And that was kind of what I was saying to my son. And so it made me start to look at other manifestations, you know, like what happened that now in my own community, your value is based on how much you pay for your tennis shoes or your phone. You know what I'm saying? I saw my community's whole value system get warped. And so when we started doing that, we said to our white cohorts, y'all not gonna sit here and observe us go through this struggle, because this is very painful and it's very personal. And so we do that more in terms of pride. Y'all got to go with the fact that y'all internalize some stuff too. You've internalized that you're always supposed to be in charge. You've internalized that you supposed, if I say something, it's like, Mark, if you would say it was what Barbara meant, I know what I meant. And these are things that people do oftentimes,
I've done
not,
them all.
trying to hurt people.
And still
But
do.
right, because we don't, this is a lifelong struggle to identify and to resist it, because it's very much a part of who we are. Or even in it's like the whole thing and how stuff get twisted. Like when we think of profiling, we think of Black men being profiled. And I have to remind people, white people being profiled too, but on the positive. You understand? It's like
it goes
we
both ways.
never flipped the script to say we're talking about the underserved as opposed to who.
Yeah, no.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When I think of all this,
Marginalized, go down the list.
yeah,
Right.
and I was going, as opposed to what? We need to understand that there are two sides. This just didn't happen to, and I don't speak, like I said, other people of color have to tell their own story. I don't tell theirs. But I'll say from the Black hand side, we have to understand, and we know, like, white people don't realize that they don't even have to know us. They just move around the world. And we realize we got to know white people, though. We got to know what your reaction gonna be, because our survival has depended on it. And so, and that white people have internalized as normative. It's like all this stuff, it's like, no, ain't nothing normal about that. Because people talking about after pandemic, we'll go get back to normal. I go like, oh, hell, you know what I'm saying? Normal sucks.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Can we get something else? Can we do it a little different?
Yeah.
Because it is this, it is normative. Our behavior toward the fact that white people don't even realize that they don't believe Black people. Yeah. And I always say the best example is, remember there was a book, Black Like Me?
Yeah.
What a white guy died himself.
Yeah. I think it
John
ended up
Howard
killing
Griffin.
him, right?
Yeah. And he traveled in the South, came to New Orleans. I'm going like, they could have asked my daddy. Hell, you know what I'm saying? It's like, well, wasn't nobody gonna listen to my daddy. But it's like, and that hasn't changed a whole lot. But that internalization, and white people don't know either. And I didn't always understand why white people didn't understand. Yeah. I like, so it's like, don't you see this? Don't you see? And years of study, understanding, living, learning, I understand why white people don't understand. It wasn't meant for white people to understand. Right. As like, as long as white people can be clueless and live in this world, things are supposed to be okay. Yeah. But we think we all see the world the same way, but we have very different worldviews. And as David Billings, the funniest thing David ever said, he said his daddy told him, it's like the way we see the world, and if you ain't the lead dog, the scenery never changes.
Absolutely. One of the stories I remember you telling related to this was, you were traveling a lot, and kind of what happens when white dudes, the plane's late. Do you remember this story where the dude would get up and demand a bunch of, you know what I'm talking about?
Do I? Because they still do it. The pandemic showed us like, man, it's like, like they all pissed because the plane leaving late. And I'll be on to say, well, put his ass on a plane that need to be duct taped so it can get where it's got to go. Man, sit down. They fixing the plane. Yeah. That was like, are you serious? That kind of stuff. That's the arrogance. It's like it's supposed to happen because I say it's supposed to. That ain't life. That has never been my life. But the same thing. I don't want to wear a mask on a plane. Well, put them all on a plane by their damn self, you understand, and let them go on somewhere. But you don't care that I need you to wear the mask because I'm a diabetic, I'm sick, you know what I'm saying? It's this, I should be able to do whatever I want to do. That is so disrespectful of other people. Recently in a workshop, like a part of it, we go around, kind of check in where are people, because I need to know where they are, because I don't want to leave people just grappling. And this one guy said to me, this one white guy, well, I'm just observing. I said, what you think, we monkeys in the cage? Partner, you agreed to the contract, you gonna participate. And this ain't no spectator sport. You know what I'm saying? To do this work, you got to do this work, which means, as young people say, you got to go all in. You got to invest your time, your emotions too. I'm not asking other people to feel, and you think you can sit there and not. It ain't happening like that. Be a voyeur. Yeah, it's like, no, not here. But that used to chill. I mean, I go like, this, I can't believe this. Well, let's just take off anyway. Yeah, but the engine gonna fall out. Yeah, but I'm gonna be late for my meeting. Yeah, you're gonna be really late. If this plane take off now. I'll never forget that, because I still see that. I see that arrogance all the time.
Well, it's not just in the airport, right? It's pretty much.
No, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it's pretty much that everything's supposed to kind of work our way.
Right. I'm supposed to be service, and I'm supposed to be service now. Because I used to think like, they just rude. Like for Christmas shopping, like to get your gift wrap, the lines used to be long. And I see these white women, they just complain, line long. And I'm going like, and see, but some of that's internalized racial oppression too. You know what I'm saying? Not demanding the service that you are supposed to get. So knowing the difference with just being rude, they got two women back there working. You see them doing the best they can. You should have wrapped your own damn presents. But all this, like you starting all of this going on, because I got to go and I have this to do. I don't know if they're going to play bridge or what, but whatever. You're going to wait like the rest of it. If the women were sitting down, not doing anything, but you get an attitude. But I always have problems with folk who get an attitude with underpaid folk who doing the best they can, and you want them to jump to you. I'm like, I sit down somewhere.
Well, and that not jumping to you may be resistance, right? Maybe like,
yes, yeah, look, oh yeah, you ready to go? I'm gonna wrap this present. Gonna take used to take me 5 minutes, gonna be 15 minutes. Now you, everybody else behind you, we gotta wait even longer.
Yeah, we just got long. Yeah. So I asked David this, like, what's it like having been a part of the Institute? Because the changes I see, whether it's the kind of whiteness industry, right, or the discussions of CRT, like so much, I might be giving y'all more credit than's due, but I really believe so much of it has sprung out of those workshops. Like the books that have been written, and I know y'all don't get the royalties, right?
Oh, but, no.
But
the royalties are the credit.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's amazing to see. It's the same thing, colonizing other people, stealing people's intellectual property. It happens. And I think people really believe they came up with this. No, you didn't.
I think that's more of our stuff, don't you?
That's exactly more white stuff. No, you ain't come up with this. You know what I'm saying? No, you didn't, because you wasn't in community. So, I mean, it's happened a lot. And I see now it's the whole thing around, we started dealing with undoing racism, and we would not get off that because folks said, well, you can make more money, you can come into more organizations if you dealt. The catchword at that time was multiculturalism. Folk built a whole multicultural industry. Everybody going around dealing with multicultural. Now it's diversity, inclusion, and equity. Same thing. And as far as I'm concerned, all of them are to distract us from dealing with systemic racism. These are a part of it. And what I say to folk, you can start there, but that's all, you start there. But that's definitely not the, because if you're really not radically transforming systems in this country, or knowing that that's where we have to go, then you are an impediment to equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Yeah, I remember Ron maybe saying that you can have some racist ass multicultural workshops.
Thank you. The multicultural, and they laugh at me because I came up with the piece. And people say, we would ask the question, well, what do white people bring to the multicultural table? And everybody's kind of stunned. And I went, hell, they bring the damn table. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but you weren't talking about white culture. You know what I'm saying? Everybody else's culture. It's like knowing white culture doesn't exist. I'm going like, bullshit. I know what I'm feeling. And that's white culture. And white people, that they really don't know that there is a white culture.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's very difficult for white people is to understand that they've been made part of a collective, whether they wanted to or not even knowing that that this white collective was created.
Yeah.
White people exist here in this country. They didn't exist all over the world. Because I would say white culture and African American culture or indigenous cultures to the United States, they didn't exist all over the world. And it's real interesting because now we even talk about anti-blackness more. However, I have to tell folk there's anti-blackness, but there's anti-African American blackness. There's some distinct differences because the globalization of racism have even other black folk come to this country and stump their nose at folk of African descent. And it's like, and you know, like that's a really tension between people of color that we've really got to deal with. But I also am very cognizant of the fact that I can't understand racism in the absence of colonialism.
Yeah.
And that colonialism and racism are, they're like twins. They, like connected together because that's how it basically entered into this country, is where it was really concretized. That this is when you start talking about the Americas, because a lot of us think that the United States is the only America, but when you just not, but when you start talking about the Americas and the racialization of people, that is the first time in world history where people, the colonized, were also racialized.
Right.
And that's a real distinct difference here. And when I look at countries around the world in terms of their history, and you talk about white supremacy and how it's emerged, there are not that many nations of the world that were rooted in white supremacy, and they're the newer ones. Now, I'm not saying that they aren't, like when I look at Europe, they always thought they were better than everybody else, but it wasn't a racialized thing. But when I look at Nazi Germany, I look at Australia, and I look at South Africa under apartheid in the United States, those particularly, not solely, but those, I'm going like, they were newer nations formed when I look at world history, and they were newer nations formed with an ideology of white supremacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The other part of it though, there's been the appropriation of the work of the People's Institute, right? But I think, do the core trainers, do the veteran folks feel really good? I mean, when you got Donald Trump saying we're not going to teach CRT, and that to me is such a not that just example, right? But the work that's happened, to me, so much of that goes back, because how many workshops have y'all done? How many states? You know what I mean? Have y'all ever counted them up?
Thousands of, I knew when I saw folk in the streets after the murder of George Floyd, I heard the language, and I knew that we had influenced so many of them. In fact, there was a big demonstration in New York, and one of the young white women, I saw her and I text her, and she had the bullhorn doing her thing, and she takes the bullhorn. I got Barbara Major on the phone. That's what nice. I know we did the work, and we feel good. Not that we're not hurt by the thieves, because that's what I'm gonna call them, intentionally or not. But I also know that this has happened historically in movement work. How many unnamed sheroes and heroes we will never know who did the grunt work to build the base for the folk that we saw, the leadership that we saw. So we feel good about the impact that we had. I cannot count thousands and thousands. There's not a state that we've not been in, not a major city, over 40 years of doing this. I think before Katrina, we had a count of 1 million people we had touched in this country. So, and that was, we keep terrible records, by the way.
Y'all are busy doing the stuff.
Yeah, we just do the work, right? But I'm sure it's many, many more than that when I think of every conceivable institution. And it's not about every institution got it or everybody that we touched, but we've touched enough people in this country that the conversation, we elevated this conversation know we did.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't, when I say we, I'm also including those on whose shoulders we stand. I will never, not like this new crop coming up. They don't give credit to nobody. They come up with everything. It's like, no, we got it and we build on it. You get it, you build on it.
Yeah.
But always give, honor to those who, because the licks that folk took before me, it's like whatever what we do is pudding. But I know we were on the right track. Yeah, when the president of the United States come out after you, I go like, something we do,
Something's happening.
especially that one. You know what I'm saying?
That and just the backlash in the nation, right? Whether it's
Oh
January
yeah,
6th or whether it's Make America Great Again. I think all of that is there's directly tied to the work y'all have been a part of. And
because
the other part of it to me is, as we do this stuff and we build anti-racist culture, right?
yes,
The recognizing the connections and the interrelatedness, and that I learned, you're my teacher, you had teachers. I think that and just all the ancestors, white or
because and
all of it.
anti-racist culture in this country is counterculture.
Mm.
Hopefully it won't always be.
Yeah.
That's where we're getting that it really becomes the culture of this nation. The pushback, absolutely. And I mean, we knew that there would be pushback.
Yeah.
We were going to do what we had to do, like we always did. When there was no money, no foundation gave us money. In the early days, we slept at people's houses, as long as we can get into a community and help people understand what they were up against. And basically, it was to prepare the people to fight in a way where they wouldn't be destroyed on the front end, because racism is very, very powerful. So that's why the organizing was critical, that you've got to build that critical mass. So it's not one individual that they take out and everything dies.
Falls apart.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So it's like, we know the language, the fact that people are talking about structural and systemic and institutional racism. 40 years ago, they ain't talk about that, Mark. I'm going like,
white privilege, you go down the list, right?
Look, we know the impact that we've had, and maybe we will never get the credit, but those of us that do this work, we do it for credit no way. But I ain't gonna lie, some of them folk, and I'm not a violent woman, but some of them folk that stole our stuff, I would like to punch them in the throat, but I can't do that because I'm a God-fearing old lady. But I'm just saying, I'm going like, yes. So, but I mean, like, I never really thought about writing a book. But one of my cohorts, Joe Barnt, who's a theologian, who's written
an elder.
Yes, who's written several books, white Lutheran minister who's written and really clear on the analysis, asked me to write a book with him. And I go like, oh yeah, okay. I'm thinking pamphlet. This brother was thinking book, right? So, because we had been talking about, what's going on in the country, and what we didn't want to see happen is that we take the same road we've taken before, that this time we create a new path, and that new path is about deconstructing the roots of racism, because I really believe, and Joe as well, that we are at this point of a possible reconstruction. And I'm excited about all this tension. People are afraid of it, but I'm going like, it has to happen. It's okay. We just don't want to be violent and people dying. But I don't call that. But I know that this tension has to happen. And that this time, though, that we don't get bought off with programs, that we understand. Because if you notice,
it's happening too, right?
Shoot, man, all the money they've dumped in the,
right?
I didn't get none of the money. I just want the audience to know. But all the money they dumping, I'm going like, my God.
And everybody's scrambling for it currently,
Yes, I'm going like with the same lack of clarity they've always had.
Right.
So it's like, however, I do believe that there are so many folk, I won't say majority, I don't know that, with the clarity. It's like, Mark, you still doing this. And I'm still doing it. I know other younger people like yourself and even younger who are doing this, that we planted these seeds of whatever they want to call them, whatever, you know what I'm saying, resistance, that the work will continue. How, we don't know. We just want to make sure that we understand the road we've traveled, because we talk about, Joe, in the book that we wrote, we talk about racism has a pattern to how it recreates itself. Because I talk in the book about the fact that these 501c3 programs showed up. That was racism with a new outfit on, a new wig, a different color lipstick. I didn't know it. How we not let it take us prisoner again, but how this time it's like, I'm not keep your program, but you got to understand that racism will not end with a bunch of programs.
Yeah, yeah.
If you
Well,
added all these programs up and just divvied up the money, everybody would have money,
yeah,
but the outcomes of these systems, the racial disparities will not change.
yeah. Somewhere out there, there's a book that the revolution will not be funded. Like a Gil
In my
Scott Heron.
generation, they used to say will not be televised.
Yeah,
Now it won't be.
Gil Scott
Yeah, it's
Heron.
like it might be televised, but it won't be funded.
Yeah. Well,
Absolutely
and
not.
there's a emerging consciousness around the nonprofit industrial complex, right? You know,
Yeah.
that kind of language. But so the title of the book coming out that you and Joseph Barn have co-authored together is Deconstructing Racism: a Path for Lasting Change, right?
Yes.
When will that be out?
It's at the editors who just said he's getting ready to go deep into it. I'm hoping by the end of the year, because
Gotcha.
they do, because this is my first time, so I'm learning. They do like 50 books a year, and the pandemic threw everything
Yeah.
back. And
Yeah.
so, which was good because I had not written all my chapters.
Gotcha.
Because I was learning it, I'm learning all the time. So we're looking maybe at the end of the year. And the funny thing is, there are about 4 book signings scheduled around the country already. I said, the book's not out. No, but we having one in Seattle, 2 in New York, and well, somewhere else. DC, and of course New Orleans, so they're like 5, right? And in Indianapolis, so there's 6, right? So I'm going like, wait till the book come out. They may not even publish it. They go like, oh yeah, they're gonna publish it. And apparently they are, because they've sent us a copy of the book cover already.
Yeah.
In terms of how they want to like push the book. But the book is gonna really piss some folk off.
Yeah. You know, all y'all need a sabbatical to write.
Uh,
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I
but you
mean,
know what?
and
But I had
well,
to deal with internalized racial oppression had told me that I was not a writer. Okay. And when I started writing, I go like, but writing with a minister, he made me clean up my language. I go like, because it really is directed to church and society, and I'm very respectful of the church. So it's like, but yeah, if I always said that, one is if I had the resources to do a sabbatical, there are people whose feet I would love to sit at just to talk and to listen. And because what I realize, I don't function, think, or any of that in a vacuum. I love noise. I love people. I hear all these different conversations. So that's where I get my juices from. Not because
yeah.
I was born brilliant, but it's
No, I get you. I get you.
yeah. But I would love time to do that. But in the midst of writing this book, it was a pandemic. I was still zooming stuff in my community, still doing my community work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay, but I did it. And I am no super person, because every now and then my kids will tell me, Ma, go sit down, we taking your phone, you understand? I because it's part of me. And one of the things that I'm really bad at, and I don't encourage people to do it, is that you got to take care of yourself. I'm not yeah.
Yeah.
One of another yeah, another colleague of mine has just written a book. I did the forward for it, and it's called New Rules for Radicals.
Oh,
I mean, he was Rules for
yeah.
Radicals, but
Saul Alinsky stuff.
yeah, but this brother is taking it to a whole nother level. It's called New Reverend Doc. He's got like 18 different degrees. I tell folk, you think that he's a reverend, but this brother is also a psychotherapist. He's got like 18, and this book is really good. I wrote the forward for it, and it talks about being able to take care of you so you can take care of your people. And they're absolutely right. And that's a hard thing to do. You must know that, whether it's your personal life, your physical health. Uh,
And
I
we've
would
seen
love
the
to have,
casualties over the years too,
look,
right?
I've lost so many of my
Yeah.
friends, so
Me
many of
too.
my friends, and I've lost them in a lot of ways. I've lost them physically, but I've lost them mentally and spiritually. Yeah. And so, you know, Like they used to have homes for veterans or whatever. And David and I, many, many years ago, talked about we need to get together and raise money to build like a retirement home for all us old organized. I go like, yeah, but I don't know if I'd ever get a break because we old, we just don't want to talk to each other about it.
Well, it's about being. I got to spend 4 or 5 days at the Alex Haley farm of Grace Lee Boggs
Oh,
years
yeah.
ago, and well, Nelson Johnson, other folks were there, right? And it was magic, like just
After Katrina, some of the women who do traditional healing, they used to say non-traditional, but that was traditional to
yeah,
me. One sister had come out of the Andes. They took me. It was like maybe six of them. They took me to. They said get to Albuquerque. They brought me to Albuquerque, and they worked on me for a week. I had no idea because I was doing a lot of leadership work after Katrina to protect. Um, I co-chaired the Rebuilding New Orleans Commission. I had to go to the White House and meet with the president and all that to protect my people's land because they were talking about green spacing and all that foolishness. But I had no idea. I go like I must have just been running on adrenaline because I was also chairing the Regional Transit Authority Board where they had already decided to bust the union up. And I go like not with me sitting here. So working with the staff, the members, the union members, like, no, you ain't gonna go get your friends no contract. No, these folk live here. These women took me. I went to Albuquerque. They worked on me everything, sweat lines, you name it, everything. And I had no idea all the toxics that, and it's not like you can see this stuff,
yeah,
but my body, I will forever, forever, forever be grateful because I didn't realize, we don't always realize how sick and tired we are.
yeah.
Uh, and so I'm trying to get better with it. I cut my phone off. I just cut my, and I watch old, I love Turner classic movies. And my friends are like, Bob, how you watch all them old movies? They don't have no black people in them. I go like, I've been with black people all day. Let me be with some white people this afternoon. They go like, you are nuts. Yeah, I am. I'm gonna be that way. But I love the old actors. I think they were really, you know, they were really actors, okay? And they really, but I'm really a fan of British, believe it or not, British. I just think they're great. British detective stories. If I can't figure out the plot, you're
Yeah,
good.
makes you think. Yeah.
Yeah.
One last thing, I'm just wondering if you could just speak to where we are as a nation right now. And I like you, I think we're at a crossroads. It's an opportunity and also terrifying, especially in rural South Georgia.
Oh
But
man.
it seems necessary. It seems the consequence of the work of the last 4 decades. Like, what are your thoughts?
You know, eh, I could, I can't see, we're at a good place. We're just at a place, Mark, but we're at as you say, we're at a critical place. And there have been points and times in this nation's history, where we've been at these critical
Yeah.
spaces. As a nation, we're gonna have to move forward or we will implode as a nation
Mm,
because folk are not going backwards.
right.
Folk got to get that. Now, what that will take, I don't know. I know that there will always be tension involved in that because we're talking about a complete change in worldview and how we see this nation and what it's been and confronting the lies that we've all been told about what this nation is and figuring and accepting the difficulty and the struggle that it's going to take to help this nation become what it says it wants to be.
Right.
So it's just I wish I could say what's we're gonna get here. I have no idea. The only thing I know for sure is that it can't stay where it is.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is some folk trying to hold, we're gonna hold the line. That line can't hold no more.
Yeah.
It's like folk are going like racism is not just damaging to Black people and other people of color. Racism is killing the souls of white folk. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when folk begin to understand that their very humanity is up for grabs and has been manipulated and used and abused to use and abuse other people. When white people accept that and get ticked off to say, you will not use my humanity to dehumanize other human beings, that I want to be different. I want to see the world different. I want my children, my grandchildren to live in a different kind of world. We got to go there. And we will go there. I can't tell you when. I wish I could say, Mark, by
Oh,
2024.
no, I'm not asking for that. I'm not
I wish
asking
I
for
knew,
that.
though. God knows, I wish I
Yeah,
could say that.
Well,
But what I can tell you is we got to move.
yeah.
We got to move.
And
And
you're
so,
not surprised by this moment either, right?
no, that's why I was like, whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I, it was gonna happen. I didn't know when. I didn't know if it would even happen in my lifetime. But it's like you don't always see it. It's like water. It gets hot, then all of a sudden you see it boil. And that's kind of what happened. But it doesn't surprise me at all because I always understood we could not remain the way that we
Yeah.
are as a nation. I only knew that what my contribution is to help us see who we are, but also to help us see who we can be.
Yeah.
So it's not just bringing the bad news, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I don't like to just bring, but also
Well,
always the potential.
yeah, and in some ways, it's an artistic endeavor to me. I mean, that sounds hokey, but we're trying to create something that hasn't been.
Right. And
You,
that's
you
what I
know?
keep telling folk. We creating this path as we walk it. We don't have
Yeah.
nobody's done it before. We got to
Yeah.
figure this
Yeah.
out. And it's
Yeah.
like, is it gonna be painful sometimes? Yes. Is it gonna be fun someday? Yeah. It's just all of like what it means to be human and see other people. We don't know.
Yeah.
But we know we got to go there.
Yeah.
I think the folk who are resisting the hardest know we got to go there. It's like they determine they're not going there, but I think they know deep down inside. You may not go there, but everybody else is. Now you can stay over here and go be a survivalist and get a bunch of cans and toilet paper and hide out in the woods, but the world gonna continue to move forward.
Yeah, that, and I think I'm starting to see some shifts with white folks in the sense that we recognize it's in our interest to end white supremacy. I
That's
had a conversation with
that's
somebody
so
the other day
hopeful.
about the connection between white male suicide rates and racism.
Yes. Now see,
So
or the fact that we all being over medicated, white people over medicated, not understand all that's got to do with this. When you've been put in a position to be the guard dog, but you ain't even know you was a dog. Like, what the hell? So I know it's got boom, you know what I'm saying? It's blowing some folks' mind and they getting pissed. I'm a dog. Yeah, you a dog. You a guard dog. And for all the dog lovers who listen to your pod, don't even come at me with that one. Y'all know what I'm talking about.
Plus you're a dog person.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. Look, Nipsey ain't running around here. But
I didn't hear it.
Did you hear Nipsey?
No, but I've always known you were a dog person. So
yeah, it's
we're
like
not beating up on dogs.
But let me tell you how the difference between generations. So my son is a rescue dog, right? Because our other dog, Sandy, passed away. And so it took a minute, but he went to get another dog. And he and my grandson named the dog Nipsey. And I went like, oh, Nipsey Russell?
That's
He go like, no, mama, Nipsey Hustle. See the generation?
Yeah.
They always kid me about this, but they're teaching me. I'm trying to keep up.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to chat about? And I just want to not dictate what we talk about, and I also don't want to keep you. It's getting late, and I know.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I just hope people that hear this, that not about agreeing, but it triggers some thoughts to maybe think different. And I say one of the most difficult things for us to do as human beings is to think new thoughts, but we got to do that. And sometimes we need to create reminders, like when you think about something, I don't care if you put it on your refrigerator, say, oh, that's the way I used to think. I gotta see if I can think it different now. So, and you said it, like, we gotta make loving into the verb that it is. And that means creating safe space for everybody.
When it's that tricky thing of how to work against dehumanization without being dehumanizing.
Yeah.
It's
Like you said, we don't know how, but we're learning. And I think we, if we search deep enough, we think that all there is to know we've created here in the West. Okay. But if we look around the world, we can learn a lot of things from other people's way of seeing the world and interacting if we're open to it.
Amen. Amen. Well, Barbara, I thank you for everything you've taught me. Thank you for the model you've been in my life. And you just have a special place here. I'll
I
always
love you,
appreciate
Mark.
what you do.
Love
And you've made my life so much better. And the work of the Institute has as well, and everybody involved. So
you got to know young white people like you are also what give me hope. I meet a lot of y'all.
I'm not
You
young though. I'm not.
You younger than
I'm
me.
pushing 60.
That's baby. You're a baby under me. But it's like you do, and you got to know that I'll speak for me. You give me hope because you let me know
Likewise.
what we could be and who we could be. So I appreciate you as well, Mr. Mark Patrick George. You take care. I love you, and I was honored to be with you.
Yeah, likewise. It's always a gift. So thank you so much.
Take care.